baby, you're not gonna win. I can see you in the dark. I can see your face turn into ash, but I won't let you walk away until you eat. You made up your mind, but I'm not gonna let you in. You made your mark on these walls, but baby, you're not gonna win. I can see you in the dark. I can see your face turn into ash, but I won't let you walk away until you eat the grapes of wrath.
All right, you ready? Hello? Yep, I'm gonna count it down a little bit. So, unmute you. Three, two, one. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another edition of the Double V Sports Talk here with BV Volsey and MV BuckHeels. Streaming live here both on Volsey Twitch, BuckHeels Twitch. We're also on Double V Sports Talk Facebook Live and Double V Sports Talk YouTube Live. Coming back at you for the nearing the end of our second month of doing this. It's been, I think, 8 episodes going into it now, and Got an exciting one today. We're going to talk a little bit about the NBA, talk a little bit about the conference football championships that happened yesterday, and then we'll get into some NFL stuff. At noon today, the college uh, playoff committee is going to be releasing their um, playoff matchups. And so we'll, at some point in time when that comes out, we'll interrupt what we're doing and get straight into that so we can talk a little bit about the playoffs coming up over the next couple weeks. But right now, I want to start off with the big news in the NBA. Giannis signing a supermax 5-year deal worth $228.2 million to stay with the Bucks, locking in his position there in Milwaukee. Matt, what does this say about Giannis and his loyalty towards the Bucks, and what does this mean for the Bucks moving forward over the next couple years?
It means that the Bucks will stay contenders for 5 years, showing that Giannis doesn't care about chasing championships that more than he just wants to bring a championship to Milwaukee. So for Milwaukee's sake, they know they have their guy for 5 years, and they'll when Giannis went on them, they definitely can bring in more pieces to try to build from that. So I don't like their chances this year, but it definitely opens a window for management saying that, hey man, we know he's locked up and we still can work around pieces. Not instead of this year flip it around and try to go in rebuilding mode. So
No, I can definitely agree with that. I'm really curious. I haven't been able to see the Bucks in the preseason as of yet. But I am curious to see how Drew Holiday being put into that mix kind of plays with things a little bit with them there. Chris Middleton showed that he can be an excellent player at times, but I thought he was a little inconsistent last year in trying to help. And
he
now,
needs to play better in the playoffs. That's one thing
absolutely, and that
for
was
both
the
of
that was
them.
the issue, right?
For
He
both
he
of
started.
them, they just Middleton struggles in the playoff, and people just put a wall up for Giannis. So
Absolutely. And with George Hill being gone now and going off to OKC, here in a league that the 3-point shot is being dominant, right? It's a league where you've got to be able to contend with a 3-point shot and make it consistently to be able to keep up with a lot of points that is being thrown up consistently, right? To stay with a lot of these other teams that are trying to that are putting up a ton of points over and over and over again, right? So it makes the 3-point shot extremely important. Well, we know the Bucks 2 years ago their issue was they didn't have enough 3-point shooting. Okay, they couldn't get the ball out right. They really struggled to do that. Well, George Hill was their leader in the 3-point shooting. Now, uh, Kyle Korver coming off the bench helped a good little bit with his 3-point shooting. But Chris Middleton was the next one on that list. Um,
Helped
how do you
a
think
good
they
little bit with
fared in that regard, or does it matter?
for the Bucks, how they
Yeah,
fared.
for the Bucks, how does losing their top 3-point shooter affect them moving forward in an NBA that is revolved around the 3-point shot?
I think it's going to hurt them a little bit, but not as much just because of what they got back with Holiday. Because Holiday can also not even be that he can shoot from three, but he can be that a bigger scorer than George Hill because he has much more of a threat than and also he could be that passer maybe to set up the offense better than what George Hill can do, and then he's also a better defender, a better perimeter defender. So although you lose a sharper 3-point shooter, they do improve in other aspects of the point guard. So I
Agreed.
think losing out on the Donovan trade, how that got leaked out and ended up NBA had to veto it because it was leaked out. They broke the NBA rules. I think that was a bigger loss to me because that was gonna fill that air, that missing hole, like you said with Hill. So I think that was a bigger loss than losing George Hill, though.
I could definitely see that. Let's go on to another team that's been in the news a lot here recently. It's clear that James Harden wants out of the Rockets. He wants out of Houston. He seems to be done with them, done with the organization. Even though they traded for John Wall. Um, what does this mean for the Rockets moving forward? I mean, we're not even going to talk about the shape that he came in to the league, showing that he's just been doing whatever he wants. There's been reports of him having impacts on their schedule where he can have 3 or 4 days at a time to be able to go out and party. That comes back and hits a 60-point triple double. Very similar to like Dennis Rodman back in the day. There's just a lot of drama going on with the Rockets.
Mm-hmm.
So, what does this mean for the future of James Harden and the Rockets?
Well, I was gonna say when you're showing up 10, 15 pounds heavy on during the preseason games, not looking good, showing that he's not wanting to put in the effort for the Houston Rockets. But this preseason, John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins, they kind of look like a little shell of themselves. They've been playing really well, and it just makes it seem as like if James is like, hey, I'm gonna. He's been saying it like I'm. If he just shows up in the regular season, hey, I'm here. Where the organization's gonna do what's best. Because everyone knows James is gonna get traded. It just matters when. He has 2 years. It could be before the trade deadline. It could be right now. It could be next year. I don't think there's a question that he's going to leave. It's just, is there a question that will he just buy in with the Rockets to say, hey, I'm here. I'll just do my best to have two good players. Injury, yeah, they're coming off injuries, but during the preseason they've looked really good and looking from both of them having those Achilles injuries. So
You bring up an interesting point. You say that he is going to get traded. It's just a matter of when. And I'm really curious if that actually happens or not. If they just say, "Hey, write it out." I mean, you saw what they offered the 76ers to be able to trade him. I mean, it was Ben Simmons and 3 first-round picks. I mean, it's that's a little steep, don't you think? I mean, I know it's James Harden, but all you're getting is a shooter. You're not getting much of a defender. Or you sorry, he can defend.
defender, but not shooter.
He can't.
I've
No, no,
heard
no.
there's
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. I was talking about Ben Simmons receiving back. Sorry.
Yes. No, I got you. I mean, it's just what's the rumor you heard?
Oh, I was just that I've heard that rumor too, but then I've also heard that the Sixers are not willing to break up their two young duos stars. That they want to see what they can do with all the adding of Doc Rivers, Dwight Howard, who have Steph Curry. So I've heard that people
Seth
are
Curry.
yeah Steph Curry. Did I say Steph? My Steph Curry. So I've heard they kind of want to see what they got with Doc in there. Um, but it made like interest if James would get traded, where would he go? Because I don't know if you heard about the report. There was a report came out this week saying about it was more of the dirty laundry about James Harden, about what he was allowed to do, what he that he dictated what time of practice, that he dictated he would show up during film session, and there was a rumor that he was late, and Russell Westbrook was like, "Start the film," and coach was like, "No, we gotta wait for Harden," and he refused to start the film because until Harden showed up, if they were in a city and James liked that city, they would stay an extra night. So it was just all this dirty laundry that started coming out that started talking about how much leverage James Harden had in the organization and how maybe that would kind of push away some organizations for training for him too. So
No, and that's understandable. I kind of wish James Harden would quit being such a friggin' drama queen,
well, they
because
talked about I was just saying they
I'd be
talked about
excited.
that too, saying
Yeah,
that
I'd be excited to see what the Rockets can do if he would just, and I hate the term "shut up and play ball." I hate the term because I know what it refers to. It's referring to a political aspect. But just you're getting paid. You're one of the most paid NBA basketball players of all time. And I'm not going to use the term shut up and play ball, but dude, you have a roster that you can make a run with. In my opinion, they have the second best roster in the Western Conference, um, in the Western Conference right now. I mean, I'm really curious to see what a combination of John Wall, James Harden, Boogie, um, Eric Gordon, uh, PJ Tucker, some of these guys, Kenny Martin Jr., what some of these guys together can do to really make a push, but it's not going to make a difference if James Harden's so stuck up his own ass.
Yeah, and I would say I would agree, but at the end of the day, like I want to blame James, but you have to blame the organization for letting him do this, and then like, hey, we're gonna take away. It's like, hey, you can do whatever, and now it's like, hey, we're not gonna let you do that. So
Absolutely.
I blame the
No,
organization more than James Harden, but I agree James Harden needs to see that he they shouldn't give him that much leverage. I'm like superstars run the NBA and they're gonna have their leverage, but I think the Rockets gave them too much leverage. So
no,
it's too much
absolutely. And
way.
when you give somebody enough of a leash to be able to go run out and do whatever they want, eventually you're going to lose sight of the leash and they're just going to be running wild. Um, and it's one of those things where, yeah, I mean, you want your superstars to have a say in what's going on and moving forward with the organization. We've seen what that's done for the organizations LeBron has been at, and he's been successful in doing so. You know, he says he's going to go to Miami if you get him some help. They go out and they get Chris Bosh. He comes back to Cleveland, talks about, look, I'm coming back, but we need to get some help. They go out and get Kevin Love. He goes to LA, he says we need to get Anthony Davis. They go out and find a way to get Anthony Davis. So you've seen where, and then he's had a ton of impact um, off the court and outside of management that's been positive impacts. Well, the Rockets tried doing the same thing with James Harden, but I don't think James Harden's character is very much like LeBron James. Where LeBron James, I think, cares more about the organization as a whole and winning and wanting to do everything he can to make sure he's holding up a trophy at the end. I mean, I think James Harden does what's best for James Harden. How many times do you hear reports of LeBron skipping out on meetings? How many times do you hear reports of LeBron not showing up to practice? How many times do you hear reports of LeBron being late to the team hotel the night before a game? And it's because winning championships is important to him, whereas James Harden is important to James Harden. And I think that's the biggest difference. When you start to try to give the keys to an organization to a player, you have to understand what that player's intentions are. And with somebody like a LeBron James, you understand his intention is to be holding up a trophy at the end of the season, to be the last team to win a game.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen that from James Harden, and I could be wrong, but in the 11 years that he's played in the league, all I've seen James Harden do is find a way for James Harden to be
Sorry.
the best James Harden possible. Everybody else be damned. And so if you can find that happy medium between him wanting to be a superstar and you being able to give him a little bit of freedom, then I think now you're able to play around with it a little bit more. And but I just haven't seen it. I think he's too selfish of a player. I can't speak about his person because I don't know him, but too selfish of a player to give that much freedom within an organization too.
Yeah, and I'll say this, and then we'll move on. I heard a statistic this week, and to LeBron's fault for him switching to three teams, because I know he would be right up there, probably even longer streak. James Harden has spent 8 years in Houston. In those 8 years, he has got them to the playoffs, and that's the longest streak by a team. So that he's good enough to get in the playoffs, but like you said, one thing he shrinks up in the playoffs, and that's really where it's gonna people talk about that James Harden might go down as one of those people, the top three players of all time, dominant but didn't win a ring. So
No,
just
absolutely.
because of the way he plays.
So let's go ahead and move on here, and let's get on to one of the most exciting teams in the NBA for 2021. This has been 2 years in the making to finally get to this point where we can see this. Matt, what are your thoughts on the Nets now that they are completely healthy with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant and some of these other guys, DeAndre Jordan, that are coming out? Um, what are your thoughts on the Nets so far?
I see the Nets as like a ticking time bomb. I think everyone is going to be watching them and just seeing if that ticking time bomb, just watching to see if they're going to get through the season and playoffs and not self destruct into the organization. If it's Kyrie Irving, he finally came out talking to the press, and not just coming out with statements. So it's just seen because Kyrie Irving has this self destruct on every single team he's been on so far, and just seeing that, and then the rumors of James Harden go back to him, that he wants to play for the Nets. Although he put out for other teams contenders he wants to play for, obviously at the end of the day he wants to play with the Nets. So if that joins, if that will be another fork into their self destruct. So I'm just wanting to see. We know how good Durant, and Kyrie is. We know how good this Nets roster, minus the two stars, they're really good roster. They made a, like I said, they made a run in the playoffs and then the bubble to get in the playoffs. So they have a lot of pieces, good pieces, and they have a team that could go and win the NBA championship. But it's more win, because I feel like for me, it's not a if, it's a when will they self destruct.
It's understandable. I'd be curious to see what ends up happening there. And, um, talent wise, you look on paper, they should be the favorites for the Eastern Conference Finals. Um, and because anytime that you have Kyrie Irving, a talent like Kyrie Irving, and a talent like Kevin Durant together, that's hard to compete against. And so talent wise, they should be the favorites for the Eastern Conference Finals. But I have a feeling you're going to say something different. So let's go into our next topic here, which is our predictions moving forward for the 2021 playoffs. Hopefully, that'll be happening in April and May this year, possibly moving into June, if we're fortunate and we don't have a repeat of 2020. But Matt, go ahead and tell me, what are your predictions for the Eastern Conference Finals matchup?
I got this one was I have the 76ers and the Nets, and I want to lean on the Nets to win, but like I said, I told you the Nets are a ticking time bomb, and because of that, I want to take the Sixers with. I'm picking the Sixers to win over the Nets just because of the. I think Doc Rivers with Ben and JaVale or I said JaVale. But the two young stars at Philadelphia. I think with Doc Rivers and the pieces around them, I think Doc will get them to come out of the East this year and just be that. I think he'll be that next step to get them, because we saw them the farthest was in semis, the conference finals 2 years ago, and I think this will be this extra pushing of them to get to the finals.
So you don't see the Heat making a repeat?
Not for how strong the East has gotten back. So
That's understandable. It's
I like the Heat, but I think everyone else got better.
and I've had some trouble with this. I naturally I want to say the Nets because of what they have, and because of the experience they have in there. But I'm kind of on the same page you are, where I think that they are kind of a ticking time bomb. It's a matter of how long it's going to be before that ends up blowing up. Because Kyrie Irving has had his issues everywhere he's been. How long until he has those issues with Kevin Durant? Now, obviously, if they're able to keep this together and they're able to get on a run, they are the favorites to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say the Nuts. But the next issue I get into is, do you take a very talented Bucks team, all right, that just signed their guy, all right, just got their guy for another 5 years, or one of my personal favorites, a very young and up and coming Boston Celtics team? I think the Boston Celtics are probably one of the more favorites to end up making it. And they've added some other pieces around to them with Jeff Tigg and Tristan Thompson. I really think that when Kemba Walker comes back and he's healthy here back in should be back next month, um, it's gonna be you're gonna start to take off some load off of Tatum and Brown. Obviously, Marcus Smart's one of the best defenders in the league. Now you're adding Tristan Thompson into that mix to be able to help in the low post and into rebounding. So I'm going to say that my Eastern Conference Finals matchup is going to be the Boston Celtics and the New York Nets. And with that, probably going to say, I think the Nets are a little pissed off about how things ended net last year. I'm going to say Boston in 6.
And I would say this about before we move on about the Celtics and about the Celtics and the Bucks. I think for me, it's more of like wanting to see what they do because both teams have struggled in the playoffs a little bit. I want to for Milwaukee. I just want to see Giannis have that kind of a. He doesn't need to be a sharpshooter, but just have a little bit more outside game going into the postseason. I think with that, this team will be different. And for the Celtics, they're still young. Jason Tatum looked amazing in the postseason. I kind of want to see him take that next step with Brown and, like you said, Kemba Walker and all them. But if one of those players like Jason Tatum takes that next step to kind of like a superstar level, I think you'll start hearing them more too in the talk, like you said. So.
No, absolutely. So let's go on to the Western Conference. Matt, what is your Western Conference Finals matchup?
So I struggled with this. I put LA, I put the Lakers, and I struggled with the Clippers and Nuggets. Um, at the end of the day, I picked the Clippers just because I liked the pieces they added. They end up not getting that point guard. I know Rajon Rondo. They didn't get him, but somehow they didn't have a backup plan to get another point guard. But I picked them over the Nuggets just because of they didn't sign back Grant. They didn't sign Grant, and he was such a big piece from their team. So with that missing piece, I think it'll be Lakers and Clippers. I think the Lakers got better. One thing, this is the first for me to see a LeBron team that he actually has younger stars on the team that are going to be big impact. So I got the Lakers Clippers, and I got the Lakers winning. So
I think it's an obvious deal that the Lakers have to fit in there, right? The Lakers were already a monster talent before. Now they're adding in pieces like Schroeder and Harrell and Marcus Saul and Wes Matthews. It's just an unbelievably talented team. And then on top of that, they do all that, and they're only the 7th highest payroll team in the league. Blows my mind that you're able to put that kind of talent together, and you're still only spending just under $138 million a year in that talent when somebody like Golden State is spending 120 or $173 million a year. Now, granted, a lot of that money is going to be sitting the bench in a suit for the year, but at the same
a lot of
time,
that money sat on the bench too, a lot of that money did sit on the bench last
exactly.
year.
And so for the second year in a row, they're going to be throwing money down the drain, so to speak, because of injuries. But here's the thing that I'm going to be interested in seeing is who's that other team. Like I'd like to say the Clippers, right? I'd like to say them because I am a big fan of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, and then they add Serge Ibaka, who's one of my favorite low post defenders, and just his style of play, the aggressiveness he plays. I'd like to say the Nuggets because I think that they're also a very talented team with Jamal Murray and um, what's the big guy's name? Having a brain fart.
For who? For the Lakers,
Nuggets.
Nuggets. Joker. You just said
Joker.
Joker.
Yep, the Joker. And then of course them adding pieces like JaMychal Green and whatnot and Michael Porter. But you also got to look at the Mavericks, right? I mean, the Mavericks are a very talented team, but at the end of the day, and I know you mentioned we were talking before how Rudy Gobert had just signed an extension with the Jazz. You got to look at what the Jazz can do. But here's my
Don't
favorites.
forget about the Suns either.
Well, and then the Suns, they signed Chris Paul, and so Paul and Booker there, to go at it. But let me just say, here is my pick right now. Put it down on paper. I'm going to say the LA Lakers and the Portland Trailblazers. I think the Portland Trailblazers are too talented of a team to not make a run for this. And here's why, right? You saw what they did in the playoffs before, and Nurkic was still on the bench with an injury. Well, he's back. He's healthy. You still got Melo. You got CJ McCollum. And then obviously you have one of my favorite players in the league, Damian Lillard. On top of that, they're adding Robert Covington. They're adding Derek Jones.
Yeah, the
They've
Cantor
added
back.
Cantor back
I just
after
say
his
that Cantor and Nokic together were a really good combo 2 years ago. They did it.
exactly. And so I'm really excited about this team, and excited. Rodney Hood went down in the playoffs, and that affected them a little bit. And like I said, Nurk was out for the majority of the end of the season there. I'm really excited about this Portland Trailblazers team, and I think they're being slept on a little bit. Um, the question is it enough for them to go beat the Lakers? And I don't know if anybody has enough to go beat the Lakers. But I do think that they are my favorites moving forward, to compete against the Lakers in the Eastern Conference Finals. But I'm going to end up having to take the Lakers in 5. They're just too talented of a team for anybody to be able to beat in the West. So, with that being said, all right, so you're taking the Nets and the Lakers, correct? I'm taking Boston and the Lakers. Matt, what's your finals prediction?
I got the Lakers and the Sixers. With
Okay, so you're
the
taking the Sixers over the Nets.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so what's your prediction there?
What, the Lakers Sixers?
Yep.
I say Lakers in 6.
Lakers in 6, LeBron with the repeat. I'm going to go with the Lakers and Boston. We're going to get another um, big time showdown there between LA
By the
and
way,
Boston.
if this would happen, the winner would have the NBA record for the most NBA championships because they're both tied at 17. By the way, if you don't remember, the Lakers tied
And
them
then
up.
and then LA would end up getting their 18th championship in 5 against the Boston Celtics, and be able to move on from there. So that's my prediction. LA in 5 over the Boston Celtics
I wish
in
that does
the
happen.
NBA championship.
I wish that happened because that'd be a great storyline for a rival
Absolutely.
superstar who takes the lead.
Well,
too.
and here's the thing, right? If it's going to happen, of course we want it to happen in 7, because who doesn't love Game 7s in the NBA Finals? I just don't think it's going to end up happening. If everybody stays healthy, and that's always a key thing, right? If everybody stays healthy, and trades are going to end up happening continuously over the next 2 months, if everybody stays healthy, that's a matchup I want to see. But we could.
The only thing to take away from that, I'm hoping they talked about maybe fans coming back into the arenas later this season if stuff starts getting better. It's gonna suck if they haven't. There's no fans because you just know this, especially for if your prediction goes right, Lakers Celtics. You just know those fans because how hated this rivalry is.
Absolutely, both in Boston and LA, because who doesn't want to see Jack Nicholson on the floor? But so glad that we got the NBA season coming back. I'm looking forward to. We got 2 days until the NBA season starts back up. Um,
Yeah,
is that right?
it starts Tuesday.
Exactly. Yeah. So we got 2 days until it starts up. Matt, let me ask you this question right here before we go on. I know it's not planned, but I'm just kind of curious to know your thoughts on it. We got a couple really good games coming up, and obviously, like on opening night, we have the Warriors and the Nets, which isn't going to be the matchup we were hoping it would be, but we do have LA versus LA, right? So 2 exciting games that we're going to be getting there. But on Christmas Day, right, we have New Orleans going against Miami. We have the Warriors going against the Bucks, the Nets and the Celtics. which could be is my prediction for the Eastern Conference Finals. We have the Mavericks and Los Angeles, and then the Clippers and the Nuggets. What is your favorite Christmas Day game? What is the game that you will be tuning in to see and can't keep your eyes off the screen?
Oh, there's so many games. I'm just saying, before I say it, I think this is the best matchup going into the Christmas Day. I think maybe it's a little not biased, but a little maybe because we haven't seen them play like normally we would see them play at least 15 to 20 games. But if I had to pick one, I would think I would have to pick the Clippers versus the Nuggets because it'll be the first time they've played it, since that Game 7 heroic reverse sweep that the Nuggets did on the Clippers. So I really want to see that because it's kind of like the Clippers lost some players, got some. The Nuggets lost a couple players, and it's like people were talking about after that Jamal Murray and the Joker are the future in the West, how they're coming out as superstars. So I want to see that one. I want to see how they match up because we all know what happened. The Clippers, first 3 quarters, dominated the game, had a over double-digit point lead, fourth quarter collapse. So I kind of want to watch that because I want to see if the Nuggets are able to come out strong with Jamal and Joker having that confidence. And the biggest thing for me is the Michael Porter. I want to see him because people talked about if he could take that next step. We know he's a good shooter. If he take that next step to be that third offensive guru and stepping into his shell, I feel like this is gonna be a really good game because I know we didn't get to it, but my dark horse pick was the Nuggets. If Porter can be that fill his shell.
It's understandable. I can definitely see that as a dark horse, for sure. But I gotta say, my favorite matchup is the Nets and the Celtics, even without Kemba Walker.
That was my second pick,
Um,
by the way.
and that's what I'm looking forward to seeing. I want to see Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown going against Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and seeing what they can do. Now, obviously, the Celtics are missing a big piece in Kemba Walker and everything that he brings to the table. But I'm really excited to see how this game goes, and that's hard for me to say because I am a huge fan of Luka. I love his personality, love the way that he plays the game, love the way that he goes about it, how much fun he has, and anytime that he's going against the GOAT, yeah, I said it. Then it's always a lot of fun to be able to watch. Um, and let me just clarify for anybody that just got really pissed off of that. Michael Jordan is the greatest champion of all time. LeBron James is the greatest basketball player of all time. But anyway,
My,
moving on.
I don't. One thing I hope, I don't know if Kimba Walker will be playing. He's
He
still
won't be playing until January.
Okay, I
They've
knew
already
he was
they've
still
already
nursing. I still knew
they've
he
already
was
said
nursing
that
his
he won't
injury.
be back until January. They're going to wait and hold off
Okay.
for the first couple weeks. So, like I said, I'm excited to see what they look like when he gets back and what they're able to do without him in the meantime, because that's also a huge part of everything. That I mean, people are going to get nicked up and banged up. How do you face the adversity there, and be able to strive forward without a key portion within your team? But
Before we
uh,
I want to make one and I want to ask you. I got one player in my mind to watch for, and I want to ask you. And I know we're going a little off topic for this, and it's just really short. Who's the player that people should watch out for that you're going to say this player's going to take over 2020-2021 season? Who's in your mind? Who's the player to watch out for that's going to make the biggest splash?
Damian Lillard,
I
I
like that.
think
Respectable.
he is motivated. He's got pieces around him. If he has the pieces to the puzzle. I think he has been right there uh, for the last couple of years, right on the edge, but they've been a piece or two short. I think that if they're able to stay healthy, he will his team through the season, through the playoffs, and into that matchup against LA if they're able to stay on opposite sides of the bracket. that's going to be the biggest thing. But I'm excited to see. I'm a huge Damian Lillard guy because of the way he competes, because of the way that he goes about his business, because of the way because of the person that he is. I have a lot of respect for that man. Um, but he's the one that I'm most excited to see this season.
I definitely respect that. By the way, he was the bubble MVP. So draw
As he should have been.
averaging over 30 points a game. Mine is so I've been watching a couple preseason games, but I've been keeping my eye and looking at stuff. Steph Curry, to me, might push for MVP. He's the person I watch for. He's been first game was kind of his feel back, but after the last two games he's played, he has been on a tear. And I would just want to see if he can continue on this tear because everyone knows with Thompson going down that it's going to be Curry have to kind of carry this team. So
Absolutely.
that's who I'm watching because right now, if he continues what he was doing or doing in preseason, it goes into the regular season. It's going to be sight to see. So.
No, absolutely. I can agree with that. That's but then at the same time, I think anytime Stephen Curry's on the floor, it's a exciting sight to see.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely can respect that and looking forward to that. Let's get into some of the games that happened yesterday. One of the most disappointing games was the fact we didn't get to see Louisiana and Coastal Carolina. Now, granted, I'm a big fan of Jamie Chadwell and what's going on there. Billy Napier is from right down the road from where I am now. His time at Furman and whatnot. Love Billy Napier. I got a buddy who coaches on that staff as well. Got some buddies that coach on Coastal Carolina staff. The very first game they had, Coastal held the ball for 38 minutes, and still it took a last-second field goal to win the game. So I was really disappointed we didn't get to see that matchup. But at the end of the day, I'm excited that both of them are able to call themselves champions and be able to move forward there. But does this hurt Coastal Carolina with a New Year's Six, especially with Cincinnati winning a very tight game with Tulsa last night? They're winning 27-24 over Tulsa. Trying to talk about these small ball teams, the Major Five, being able to make a New Year's Eve bowl run. Does this hurt Coastal or does this help Coastal?
I think it hurts them just because of the bowl, the playoff, was it committee? I think wants to see them because I think the biggest argument when you talk about the Power Five versus like these smaller teams like Cincinnati, Coastal Carolina, even like when BYU was in the mix, that they don't play. They don't have the opponents they go against are not like even if they're going against like a South Carolina team, a Tennessee team, kind of like those kind of teams in the middle pack teams that their teams can match up. People are talking about like the better teams in these smaller divisions because of the recruiting power they get. So for me, this was just another strength game, hard matchup for Coastal off their schedule again. So it's just like if it was a weak SEC championship game to some like team that struggled to get in, I would say no. But to a team that Louisiana only has one loss and it was the Coastal, I think it hurts, especially that for my mind. I know we'll talk about when the playoff predictions come out, or well, when the playoff. We'll talk about predictions, but when the playoff committee comes out and makes an announcement, I feel like that Coastal is fighting with Northern Dane and Texas A&M, and more people are going to talk about the strengths of their strengths of their losses. Coastal's sitting over here undefeated, but you start saying who did they beat compared to the competition that the other two had.
I think you got to put the Bearcats in there too. I mean, they're still undefeated. Yeah. They just won the American Conference Championship over a very good Tulsa team in a very good game last night. And so I think they have a little more legitimate claim than Coastal Carolina does. Plus, you can argue that their schedule was more difficult. Plus, they did it in a more dominating fashion. Now, the one big win that Coastal has is obviously the win over BYU. but they did beat App State, but App State's been down this year. They did beat Louisiana, who's a very good team, but they didn't get a chance to do it for a second time. So I do think that somebody like a Texas A&M or a Cincinnati or somebody like that and Notre Dame have more of a legitimate claim. But I do think that 2 wins against Louisiana would have definitely helped seal their deal for at least a big New Year's Eve 6 bowl game.
I'll give you this. I'll give you early of my. I think we'll give our predictions early. Who we think they're not in for me. So although
No,
even
they're
if they want they played, I still wouldn't have put them in.
there would have had been some more things happening. I know we don't have it on the list, but on Friday night we did have the Pac-12 championship. We'd be remiss not to mention them with Oregon beating USC in a very fun game to watch there, 31-24.
Upsetting, and
Um,
they weren't even supposed to be in it.
it blew my mind to be able to I was so excited that we were able to see that game. Definitely enjoyed being able to watch that and see uh, a very close, good game there. But let's get into Oklahoma versus Iowa State. I had predicted Iowa State winning that game, thinking that they may have been able to nudge it out, and they had opportunities. Here's what I'm going to say is on that false start, or sorry, the offsides call that they got all fired up about. Here's the thing that I need everybody to understand that drives me nuts. A defender can cross the line if he gets back and did not put the quarterback at risk. I don't know why everybody loses their mind when somebody jumps across the line and gets back. It's on the offense. That was on Iowa State for either A, not reaching out and touching him, or B, not snapping the freaking ball. They had 2 opportunities to do it. And both times they just stared at him and like, oh, he dropped, throw the flag, throw the flag. But he got back, he didn't do anything.
If you want to see
It drives
offsides,
me.
you should watch the Alabama game with the defender. For some
I
reason,
did, yeah.
touching the offensive player before the play starts. And he was off. His foot was over, but he was just touching him the whole time.
Yeah, it just blows my mind that I know they were trying to get it, but I think you have to admit, Matt, that was a much better game than you anticipated it being.
Mm-hmm.
And Iowa State is a very good team that deserves everything that they had. Would have liked to see them ended up coming out winning, so we didn't have to see Oklahoma win however many it is now, 4 straight or whatever it is
straight.
now.
It's 6
straight. I know Clemson was had their 6 straight, and so they
I can't remember. I just remember when they did team pictures, everyone was holding up 6.
it easily could have been 6 again. They've been a dominant force in that league for a long time now. Let's take a look here. They have
6 straight.
15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Yep, so 6 straight there. Been a dominant force in that league. But I do think Iowa State played extremely well. They had opportunities, just didn't capitalize on it. And with an Oklahoma team like that, you cannot miss. You've got to be on the money the entire game, and they just didn't have any room for error. Unlike the next matchup we're going to talk about in the Big Ten championship, where you had Ohio State versus Northwestern, where Ohio State has the talent and the ability to be able to make a lot of mistakes and still be able to come back. Now, I was texting with some friends last night, and they were saying how much of a trash team this Ohio State team is for allowing Northwestern to be able to hold them down like that. And let me just say, I hate it when people use the past teams, the way the team has played in the past, to be able to dictate what they should be able to do. Northwestern has been on the rise here lately, but you can't just say, "Oh, it's Northwestern." They were in the Big Ten championship for a reason, right? They made their statement there for a reason, beating teams like Wisconsin and whatnot. But Ohio State, finally realized that they don't need Justin Fields to play tremendous to win games. Why? Because Trey Sermon, the Oklahoma grad transfer, showed why he can be a dominant force. This dude went from being possibly a fourth or fifth round draft pick to solidifying him getting selected in the top 2 rounds this season by transferring to Ohio State. I mean, the dude ran for 29 carries. He went for 331 yards. 331 yards. I mean, this dude broke the record that Zeke Elliott held for the most rushing yards in a Big Ten championship.
Broke Eddie George record.
And he broke Eddie George's record for the most rushing yards in an Ohio State football game. Just absolutely unbelievable game by Trey Sermon to will his way. And so people want to say, well, Ohio State didn't put up a whole lot of points against Northwestern. Well, that's because they ran the ball. I mean, it's not one of those. It's not a big secret that when you run the ball, you take time off of the clock. You're able to grind it out a little bit more. And Ohio State knew that if they could run the ball and keep the clock, they didn't have to worry about Justin Fields. Right? He didn't have that great of a game, but at the same time, they just grinded it out. Just took their time. Just said, you know what? We're not going to get fancy. We're bigger. We're stronger. We're more athletic. We're just going to absolutely maul you. And that's what they did. And anytime you're a heavy running team, you very rarely put up big time points, right? Because you're taking up a lot of time running the ball. What were your thoughts here, Matt? Did Ohio State hurt themselves or help themselves in this 22-10 win, Big Ten championship win over Northwestern?
I can't say they hurt themselves for losing or winning. Sorry, but I think it opens their. I think it helped them because it opened their eyes. Because like a like well, we're talking about the college prediction. Honestly, I see there's only. I know people want to say Clemson. I think everyone talked about how good Clemson is, but I think everyone knows right now the team to beat is Alabama. And when you look at what Alabama wants to do, they're they're not as dominant in their defense in the past, but they're still really talented defense. But when you look at this offense, they like running the ball, and what we saw this yesterday was the rush defense at times were had too many mistakes. They struggled. They couldn't stop the run. Third down conversions could get them off the field, and then like we saw Justin Fields struggling with the 2 interceptions, only throwing for 114 yards. Yes, a lot of people weren't talking about this Northwestern defense because they are a very good defense, underrated defense to say, just because when you're talking about the Big Ten, only Ohio State's the only team you're really talking about. Indiana, when they were undefeated, but Northwestern was flying under the radar with this defense. So I feel like for me, it opens the eye for Ohio State. And I think Justin definitely figure you won't see him struggle like this going forward, though.
Yeah, you don't see him do something like that very often. You know, um, it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening. This was a different game for Justin Fields. You know, they haven't played in a couple weeks, but I just can't emphasize how impressed I was with Trey Sermon. I mean, that dude, unbelievable. Was a lot of fun to watch. And, you know, let's go into possibly Ohio State's matchup in the playoffs. Clemson winning in dominating fashion over Notre Dame. And obviously the big storyline is Trevor Lawrence coming back and being able to knock off Notre Dame, because we all know Notre Dame won when DJ was at the helm and Trevor Lawrence was out with COVID. But here's my big storyline on the day. In the first matchup, Notre Dame held Travis Etienne to 34 yards rushing. Etienne went off 10 carries, 124 yards. The running attack. And what did I say before this game started?
Don't forget kick return that he had that big
Well, no,
return
absolutely.
back too.
But what did I say the biggest difference in this game is going to be?
NTN.
Travis Etienne, right? Trevor Lawrence is a dominant quarterback, but guess what? DJ's a dominant quarterback. When you look at Clemson over the last couple of years, you had Taj Boyd, then you get Watson, and then Deshaun Watson, and then you get Trevor Lawrence. They're going to be fine with DJ, regardless if Lawrence stays or goes. They're going to be fine. And so quarterback's never been the issue. I'm curious what Clemson does next year after they lose ETN because of how much of a workhorse he's been. Now, granted, he hasn't had the year we were all thinking that he was going to have, right? He's still a top tier running back and probably a top 2 running back in the nation right now. But him being able to go off, he had that big run there that ended up taking it to the house. What were you more impressed with yesterday, Matt? Um, Notre Dame's offense be able to put up, be able to grind it out, or Notre Dame's defense and holding Notre Dame to 10 points?
My biggest thing, and I want to get back. I'll get back to the offense because my thing was the defense. Because even though Trevor Lawrence didn't play, this defense got torched. And Book, he still had a pretty good game. If you look at 20 for 28, 200 yards, no interceptions. But this defense front seven got after him. They kept on doing
6
like
sacks.
yeah. I was
6
gonna say I
sacks.
can't remember how much. I know last time I heard was 6. I didn't know if they got a 7th. But if you saw, they were doing a lot of stunts. They were doing a lot of delay blitz. But the biggest thing was they were containing him because everyone knows Books wants. Brian, I have the stat in front of me. Do you know how many rushing yards Books had at the end of the game?
I'm guessing it was a negative. It was a negative number.
Negative 35.
That seems like 125 less yards than
he
Trevor
averaged
Lawrence had.
negative 3.5 because I think the game before I have it, he ran for 67 yards. And the one thing that you had to people know, Books can run, and you have to contain him. And I thought they did a great job. And a lot of times it was a player coming up behind and bringing them down. I think that was the biggest reason why Clemson won because this defense front 4, front 7 got after Brooks, and that was the key factor. Now going to the Clemson offense, I was trying to look up. They ran the ball 33 times for 34 yards, and we talked about
Travis Etienne had 10 carries. Trevor Lawrence had 14 carries.
Yeah.
Etienne for 124 yards, averaged 12.4 yards carry. Trevor Lawrence with 90 yards, averaged 6.4 yards carry. Both of them had a touchdown.
I'm talking about the first time they matched up a month ago.
Okay.
So they had 33 carries for 34 yards. Travis had 28 of those 34 yards. For me, the biggest thing was this week they had 219 yards. The biggest thing was Trevor Lawrence. He ran for 90, and you just saw the threat. They did those read options, and the threat was that Lawrence, to me, I think for the experience, and I think was that for Notre Dame, they feared Lawrence more than the DJ. Not saying DJ's bad. DJ's good. He has a bright future looking for him. Can't wait to see him next year to see how he does with some of the experience like that Notre Dame game and the Boston College. But Lawrence was the biggest factor because everyone knew going into the whenever they played a month ago. I was trying to think the week that everyone was like they're going to pound Travis. They're just going to give him the ball. He had 8 less carries, and he averaged 11 yards per more. So definitely them running that read option and Trevor picking up those big yards and conversions was a big hit against Notre Dame's defense because they just couldn't match it. So
No, absolutely. And one of the things I was very impressed with Clemson's defense and what they're able to do is the way they were able to get matchups, right? They would show 5 and then bring 3. But what that does is when you show 5, you now get the guards anticipating taking on the linebackers who never even come. And so you're getting one-on-one matchups across the board. And occasionally you show 3, bring 5. Sometimes you show 4, you bring 6. And it's just being able to, I think they had Book rattled in the sense of pass protection. They had that center for Notre Dame unable to clearly call out who the mic was and being able to call which side they were going to slide to and whatnot. And then they also did a great job with corner blitzes. I mean, Malcolm Green had a sack and a half from the corner position coming off what we used to call the old we used to call it cat because C for corner, and when I was with the catamounts, and it's the old cat blitz, and you'll hear receivers out there, cat, cat, cat. And it's just one of those things where they were bringing guys from every which way. You saw the confusion from Notre Dame's offense, unable to really get anything going. But here is, you mentioned the pressure, and I'm a big sack guy, being a D-line guy. Here's the thing I was most impressed with. They held Williams to 50 yards rushing, held him to 3.3 yards a carry. They forced them to drop back and pass. We talk about you work on first and second down so you can have some fun on third down and go get after the quarterback, because everybody wants to work on going after and get the quarterback, right? They talk about all the sacks, all this pass rush, all this and whatnot. They don't talk about in practice, right? You spend 30 minutes working on the run, you may spend 10, 15 minutes working on the pass. And it's because if you don't stop the run, you're never going to get to pass rush. And so the fact that they shut him down in that kind of way and forced Book to drop back. Now, even granted, when Book had time, he still played extremely well, right? He still went 20 for 28, 219 yards. The problem was he didn't have a whole lot of time. And so that time didn't come very often. And, he took advantage of it when he did. But I was extremely impressed with this Clemson team. They look like they're finally getting into form. But this gets into our next game.
By the way,
I don't.
I would say to someone that I didn't know that played last week, that was a big impact player for this defense. James, the number 47, the linebacker, because he's the heart and soul of this defense.
Absolutely.
And him being back you saw the impact that he made. So.
Absolutely. And you saw that come in. But, after watching that, I'm still curious. I don't know if they have enough talent to beat this Alabama team who just escaped a very good Florida offense, 52-46. Now, before we get into talking about this game, right, and probably and we get into talking about the 3 Heisman candidates that Alabama has on offense, Matt, what were you more impressed with? Okay. Were you more impressed with, or sorry, I shouldn't say impressed. What worries you more? Okay. What worries you more? Clemson's offense missing all of these receivers, or Alabama's defense giving up 46 points to Florida?
That's a really good question. Just because I think you have to compare it, because Florida is not a horrible offense. They are a really good offense. And then it comes like who has a better offense, Florida or Clemson? And you talk about those weapons. At the end of the day, I think it worries more about Alabama's defense, because I give Clemson a slight edge over to Florida's offense, just slightly. And just because of how we've seen Clemson, what they did to Notre Dame, who also is a better defense, I think, than Alabama. So for me, it's more Alabama's defense. They had a lot of, at the end of the game, they had a lot of questionable decisions. Like that, they had a lot of penalties that hurt them. We talked about that earlier, that goal line situation where the defender is just, minus his foot being over the line, he's just touching the receiver. Or I don't know if you saw the pass. Remember the pass interference when they had everyone in goal line, and then they put Pitts out there by himself versus a corner.
It was on the 2-point conversion.
Yeah, and they get a pass interference, and then they go back to it. Like, I was like, they had Pitts, they had the same formation, and I'm just thinking, oh my god, they're going to fit the same route. And the safeties, and instead they ran it. But I'm just thinking, I was like, you need to get someone out there. I was like, you can't match a corner on a 6'6" receiver or tight end.
He's a receiver. We all know he's a large receiver that just plays at tight end.
He's a red zone matchup, like a nightmare. I'm just like, what are you doing? So that with these freshmen that are inexperienced, next year I would say different question. I think Alabama is better, but this year it does worry me more, just because although Florida's offense is good, I think Clemson's offense is better, and the biggest reason is because Trevor Lawrence is behind the center, and he just makes that offense flow way better than Florida. I think Florida does.
And I would agree with that, but here's I think Florida had some poor decisions there, especially in the fourth quarter and at the end of the second quarter. They scored in 3 plays there at the end of the second quarter, right? They scored in 3 plays. They had 2 big bombs to um, Tony. Okay, they had 2 big bombs to Kadarius Tony, and then Trask ends up running in for the touchdown. But here's the thing: they snapped the ball with 20 seconds left on the play clock, giving Alabama a full minute and change to be able to work the field with 2 timeouts and go back and score. I mean, it should have been a 28-17 halftime score with Florida getting the ball back, but they gave them too much time, and of course Najee Harris ends up scoring a touchdown, which allows them to go in 35-17 at halftime. Now Florida played tremendous in the third quarter and had a very good fourth quarter, but it was just little things where I think they gave away their opportunities to be able to stand a chance to um, make it a better game. But here's the thing, right? Alabama has three Heisman contenders on offense. Obviously, they got Mac Jones and what he's done at the quarterback level, being able to throw 5 touchdowns over 400 yards yesterday, being a dominant force all year long. And we got to see one of the best quarterback matchups of the season with him and Trask, with Trask going for 3 touchdowns and over 400 yards. Both over 90 QBRs, a tremendous matchup between those
Both
two,
also
obviously.
SEC records. Mac number one now, Trash number two in all-time passing yards in the SEC championship.
Exactly. Both of them tremendous, a lot of fun to watch. Obviously you got the Kadarius Toney and Kyle Pitts there for Florida, but you also have Devontae Smith with 15 catches, 184 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and he's in the Heisman race. But Najee Harris,
Woo.
respect going out to him coming back for his senior year. 31 carries, 178 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Not to mention his 5 catches and 3 touchdowns in the air. The dude caught the ball 5 times and took it to the house, 3 of them. And they weren't easy touchdowns. He had to work for them. They did a tremendous job of getting out empty. They had a couple little stop and go plays for him or hitch and slants. They had a bunch of different things that worked for him that they did a tremendous job at. But that dude, man, that was special to watch. And let me ask you this, Matt. We had 2 of the best running backs in college football, and Travis Etienne and Najee Harris coming back for their senior years. If you're an NFL team right now and you need a running back, who are you taking? Travis Etienne or Najee Harris?
I think it's a coin flip. If I'm a GM, I'm flipping the coin going. All right, that's what we're taking. Because for me, I don't think you can't go wrong on either one of them. At the end of the day, you're breaking down probably because they're both explosive runners. They're both great catching the ball. So you're breaking down just like the small details. Maybe like who has a bigger injury history, who does maybe this a little bit better. Maybe you're breaking down their draft combines. So at the end of the day, for me, it would be a coin flip because whoever gets who, you're getting a good running back, a great running back. That's good.
And I would agree with that, but at the same time, I got to go with Najee Harris. I'd love to see Travis Etienne, but at the same time, Najee Harris and his ability to catch the ball and go out through. Travis Etienne struggled with it up until this year. It's something that he put a lot of focus into the offseason, and we've seen the benefits play out this year. But we've also seen teams be able to shut him down this season, put all the emphasis on him, and force either um, Trevor Lawrence or DJ to beat them, which they have. But nobody has stopped Najee Harris. This dude is absolutely unbelievable in what he's done. I've been extremely impressed with him and the way that he's been able to play this year. Now, let's go ahead and say, all right, we've had the playoff show just started here 5 minutes ago. We're going to end up having our playoff matchups here shortly. I was at the Texas A&M Tennessee game. Really thought it was going to be more of a blowout there. Let me ask you this. I think we can both agree that Alabama's going to be number one.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I think we can both agree that Clemson is going to be number two.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can both agree that Ohio State's going to be number three.
Yep.
All right. So that leaves the fourth spot. I'm going to just name out a couple teams here. The fourth spot is either going to go to Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Cincinnati. Do you see anybody else that could fit into that matchup?
I mean, Coastal has a chance, but
Sure, we'll put Coastal in there. All right. So we'll say those four teams be able to fit into the fourth spot. All right. So Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Cincinnati, and Coastal. Now I think when you're looking at undefeated teams, I think Cincinnati has a more legitimate shot than Coastal. Would you agree with that?
yeah.
All right. Let's take out Coastal. Now you have to ask yourself, what is more impressive? Texas A&M season, where their only loss came to Alabama at 52-24, second game of the year. All right. They've got a 41-38 win over Florida. Okay. They have a 31-20 win over Auburn. Obviously, they didn't get to play against Ole Miss this year. It got postponed twice. They have a 28-14 win over Mississippi State. They have a very disappointing 17-12 win over Vanderbilt. Is that more impressive? All right, that their only loss in the SEC is to Alabama, or Notre Dame's 10-1 season, where their only loss came to Clemson, where they also beat Chapel Hill in Chapel Hill 31-17. They obviously beat Clemson at Notre Dame 47-40. They destroyed Pitt. They had a very tight game against a good Louisville team, 12-17. Who on paper is the more impressive team? Now, we say all that, and that's saying Cincinnati doesn't get in. Don't get me wrong. Cincinnati has been a dominant force. Cincinnati has gone 9-0. They obviously just won the American Conference. They had a big win over Tulsa, 27-24. They've been averaging like 42 points a game. I don't think that they're more impressive than the other two. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
It comes down to Notre Dame and Texas A&M. What are your thoughts there?
Am I getting my prediction? Who I think should
Yep.
be the four? I think I'm
Yep.
gonna surprise you because I think didn't you have A&M in?
They were my dark horse. They were my dark horse at the very beginning of the year.
But I think you picked them already as your fourth team to get in.
I haven't picked yet.
No, I'm talking about like when we did our predictions or
Yeah, when we did our predictions early on, they were my dark horse team. When we did our predictions way back when in the very first episode, they're my dark horse team to get into the playoffs.
So I think was surprising. I think before I did, I think was it you picked A&M and I picked Notre Dame, and surprisingly, I think this surprised you. I kind of switched my pick, and I picked A&M. Going to you talked about the matchups. I think that makes it different. But for me, when I look at these two teams, and I know the people are gonna say Notre Dame just lost a game. They just lost to Clemson, and it was not the. We talked about Brooks didn't have a good game, but it was still pretty ugly. It was still an ugly loss that you really saw. Clemson, you never felt that Clemson never had after the first score. You never had was going to lose control of this game. But when I look at the Aggies, for how good they did lose to Alabama, but it was the first they struggled against Vanderbilt, who's first game of the week. We all know about the COVID situation. Everyone didn't have their going strengths. They played Alabama week 2, and if these two were the end up was being a SEC championship, I thought it was going to be a way closer game too. I thought this was going to be a closer game than the Florida-Alabama game. So breaking that down, I pick the Aggies just because if you take away, um, if you say, hey, we'll just take off that the loss from Clemson. I think the Aggies lost to Alabama, and the way they beat like this Florida team and some of these SEC that I think is stronger than ACC. All the ACC's coming up. I think the Notre Dame lost to Clemson in championship game, and barely beating this Clemson team with all the injuries and COVID rabbit. I think gives the Aggies just the slight edge to get in.
And so let me say this. I think because Notre Dame beat Clemson early, and then they ended up, even though in a dominant fashion, honestly, I think Notre Dame probably is the more legitimate team to slide into that fourth spot. I think that they are probably the better team because here's what the college playoff team looks at, right? They look at the best team, the best four teams to go into, regardless of record, regardless of what they've done. They look at the best four teams. I think Notre Dame is the fourth best team in college football. If Florida had half of a defense, then they'd be the fourth best team. But their defense is so bad that I just can't see it. So here's the thing, right? I would rather see Texas A&M in there. I think Texas A&M would be more competitive. I think it'd be a lot of fun to watch, even though I think Notre Dame is the fourth best team. I wouldn't be mad with either one of them getting in, not at all. But I would rather see Texas A&M in over Notre Dame, even though I think it's going to be Notre Dame. I'd rather see Texas A&M in there because that would mean we're going to get a rematch of the Texas A&M Alabama game. Although I'm already excited for this Clemson Ohio State rematch. I'm extremely excited for this rematch. Now, on top of that, we obviously had um, the Rose Bowl last night being announced that it's not going to be played in Pasadena, California. It's ended up going to be played at the Cowboys Stadium there at A&M, or sorry, AT&T Stadium, um, because of the restrictions California has with fans. A lot of the coaches in the NCAA have said they would like parents and family to at least bare minimum be there. So we'll have a game at the
I was
Superdome. We'll have a
I was
game
gonna
at
say
AT&T Stadium, and then obviously the championship in Florida. So Louisiana, Texas, and Florida, all states that will allow fans to be present at the games.
I was just say because I put that on my notes to mention, and I was like, did you Did you have a look at my notes before we started? Because I had that on my notes right here, the Rose Bowl, because there was talks about Brian Kelly talking about that. He was saying that if they play at the Rose Bowl, they would not play if they couldn't have the parents and families there. So
Yeah, and it'd be disappointing to see. Now I understand the health concerns that go along with it, but it'd be interesting to see. It'd have been sad to see a lot of these guys going out in the semifinals, having a championship game like that without any fans there. Hopefully, they can be smart and not be able to um, put anybody at further risk. Now,
yeah, and I would
we're
say,
gonna have to
oh sorry,
go ahead.
I was just
Go ahead.
say when we're talking about going back to the my last name of the selection, I feel like you would agree, whoever it is, for me, if it's Texas A&M or Northern Dane, I was like, I think we could say they are going to get in. I think Cincinnati, it's just going to be whoever the committee they say like maybe we'll give it to them. For me, I don't think they get in, but they still have like I still think they'll
Here,
get a couple picks, but it would be
here's
surprising for me.
Here's what I want to see, right? Here's the thing I don't want the committee to do when it comes down to these six bowl games. I do not want to see Cincinnati versus Coastal Carolina.
Mm-mm.
Don't do that to me. I want to see Cincinnati, Florida. That's the game that I want to see. Florida versus Cincinnati, two of the most high-powered offenses going against each other. Give Coastal somebody like Northwestern or even Oregon. I mean, I would love to see Jimmy Chadwell go against Oregon or even USC. But Give
Gotta.
me a Cincinnati Florida matchup. That's my only request here. And if Notre Dame doesn't make it in, you know, then we'll talk about a Notre Dame Florida.
I
That
got
would be
a.
my second thing.
I got a curveball for you. Little question, and I just want a percentage from you. Okay. What about the college playoff committee threw a big curveball at everyone? Let's say Alabama won, Clemson two, and I won't put 3 or 4 because it's up there. But let's say they said, you know what, Ohio State, you played 6 games. Yeah, you won the Big Ten, but you have had 2 games that you struggled in, and it's only 6 games. We haven't really
And so,
seen you,
and so they put
and they
Notre
put
Dame,
Notre
Texas
Dame and
A&M.
Texas A&M in. What do you think the percentage of that happening? At 100% of guaranteed 0% not happening. If Ohio State got bumped out for Notre Dame, Texas
3%,
A&M, you
three
give
percent chance
3%.
of happening. 3% chance of it happening, and here's why: because I don't think the college football committee, the playoff committee, cares. I don't think they care that they played 6 games. I think that they want the best possible show possible, and if you don't put Ohio State into that show, then you're not getting the best show possible. Though they are the second most talented team in the nation. You have, and if you want to talk about pure talent, it is Alabama, it is Ohio State, it is Clemson, and then probably Notre Dame. If you want to talk about the pure talent within the country right now. And so it'll be interesting to see. I've been checking on this. They still haven't revealed the teams. They're going to end up revealing them next, but we got to get moving on. We'll come back to it whenever they announce it. We're going to come back to it, but we're going to blow through some of these NFL games right now. Obviously, we had a great Chargers game last night, with Chargers end up winning 30-27. We had the Bills end up beating the Broncos 48-19. We had the Packers end up beating the Panthers 24-16. However, the Panthers did have 2 receivers in Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore go over 1,000 yards for the first time for the Panthers since Moose and Steve Smith did it long there ago. But let's go ahead and get into our matchups for today. Um, Matt, let's just kind of flip back and forth and try to get through this kind of quickly since we're at with 40 minutes to go until first kickoff today. Talk to me about the Patriots Dolphins game today. What do the Patriots need to do to beat Tua and the Dolphins? What do the Dolphins need to do to beat Cam Newton and the Patriots?
Um, I think it's what I kind of talked about last week, and I was wrong about. I said the Miami team, they turned you over. This defense, they're led by their defense. Not saying Tua is bad. Tua is really good. I feel like he has a bright future. But for me, for Miami, you know what they want to do. They're gonna play good defense, and they're gonna turn you the ball over. I know I made the prediction. I'll throw myself under the bus. I said that Patrick Mahomes won't turn the ball over because he doesn't, and this Miami team, that's what they're big on. Well, what he do? He threw 3 interceptions, but he won the game. So Miami, they're gonna get after it. And this is a revenge game because we remember this was week 1, and at the end of the game, Cam Newton for some of these defensive players got a little chippy. Um, but for me, the focus I'm going to be seeing is the Patriots offense versus Miami's defense that I talked about with Miami's defense. We all know what the Patriots want to do. They got to run the ball. When they can't run the ball, they look like a high school team that hasn't passed the ball probably for like 10 days. And I'm not trying to disrespect Cam Newton, but that's just how it is. I was like, when they have a running game, you don't see the passing attack, and you just because it's just and it's not too more Cam, it's more the lack of talent they have on this offensively. So for me, I want to see it because we want to know, because this Patriots defense has turned around. So for me, it's more the offense. Can the Pats be able to move the ball on this Miami team and not turn over the ball?
That's a great question. Um, I think this Dolphins defense is extremely talented, and they're going to be going against a struggling Patriots uh, offense. And at the same time, you have a tremendous Dolphins defense going against a struggling Patriots offense. I think the key is going to be time of possessions. I think the Patriots need to hang on to the ball if they're going to be able to win this game. They have to hang on to the ball longer than the Dolphins, keep Tua off the field, and they have to make this Dolphins defense work. They can't give them easy turnovers. They can't give them easy 3-and-outs. They've got to be able to hang on to the ball, convert on third down, and avoid turning the ball over. That's going to be a big key for them winning this matchup. Let's go ahead and go to an exciting matchup today. You have the Seattle Seahawks going into the Washington football team. Reports that Alex Smith may or may not be playing. Did you ever hear a final word on that?
Yeah,
Um,
I messaged you, but I don't know if you saw it. He will not play. So Hassan will be the starter today.
exactly. So Dwayne Haskins there is going to be the starter, which means I think it's going to fall a lot on this Washington defense. Now, this Washington defense with Chase Young and Sweat and Brian Patrick Carrigan has been one of my favorites to watch. I heard the quote the other day. Chase Young is what we all hoped Clowney would be. And, it's 100% right. I mean, Chase Young is an absolute dude. He's going to be a force in this league for a long time to come. Excited to see what he does there. And so you have one of the best pass rush defenses in the Washington football team going against somebody who has been sacked the third most in the league in Russell Westbrook. Now, granted, they didn't give up any sacks last week. However, that was against the Jets. Now, the pressure that Washington's able to put on Russell Wilson is going to be the difference in my mind in this game. However, you have a mediocre Seahawks defense going against a Washington offense that I cannot trust with Dwayne Haskins back at quarterback. He's a turnover machine. It's not very good. I was really hoping we'd be able to see Alex Smith come back and be able to see the matchup here between Alex Smith and Russell Wilson. But that means Washington's going to have to be able to run the ball, take off pressure off of Dwayne Haskins. And then obviously Seattle has their two running backs back in the lineup. They're going to be at full force to take pressure off of this offensive line and the pass rush that Washington's going to have. They really need to be able to run the ball effectively to help Russell Wilson out and not take so many shots. Do you have any comments before we move on?
Biggest thing for me, for going to Washington side, if they have a chance, it starts with Gibson. He's kind of having a breakout near the end of the year. Average was having 100. I think he was hurt last week, but if Gibson can have a really good game, it gives this Washington team a better chance. And then from the flip side, Seattle just needs to stay out of the third and longs, third and eights plus. If they do that, they won't have to worry about this front seven pressure on third downs.
Agreed. So Matt, why don't you talk to me about the 8-5 Tom Brady Bucks going into the 4-9 Matt Ryan Falcons? We had mentioned that the Falcons had been looking really good since Rasheed Morris took over, and then all of a sudden it was kind of surprising to see what ended up happening. I mean, obviously they had the massive win there over the Vikings to start things off, ended up losing a tight one to the Lions. Then they go beat the Panthers. They beat the Broncos. They lose to the Falcons. Had that massive, impressive win over the Raiders. End up losing back-to-back games here to the Saints, which very good team. And then the Chargers. They've got a tough stretch coming back out where they got to face Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, and Tom Brady to end out the season. What are your thoughts on this game?
I think the question for me is, what Falcon team are we going to see? Are we going to see the team that trumped the Raiders and beat them 43-6? We go see this Falcons team that played the Saints that only put up 9 and 16 points, or because we know offensively they're talented, they have the weapons, but I think everyone else, more not looking at Atlanta. People are going to say, can Atlanta offense put up points? The biggest thing is looking at Tampa because Tampa's a bigger headline story. We've seen what they did. It didn't look pretty, but they got the win. We want to see more of this offense of Tampa Bay's offense. We want to see um, the running game, them committing to the running game because I think we both agree, they got to commit on the running game because this team does not do well because everyone just like, hey, they're not gonna run the ball. We're just gonna blitz and start hitting Tom Brady. And the other thing for me is this Tampa Bay defense because at one point earlier in the year they were considered the best defense in the NFL, and they had a big fall off. Mostly, you can say against tougher opponents. So I want to see them if they can get back on track and start clicking near the end of the season.
I think it'll be a lot of fun to see. Um, what ends up happening here, I agree with you. What Falcon team are we going to see? And obviously you have one of the best. I still think there's still a dominant defense in the Buccaneers here, but a lot of it depends on what they end up doing on the ground. They have to run the ball to be able to take pressure off of Tom Brady. Obviously, they have talent at the receiver position, and their offensive line is extremely talented, but they're very good. They're an extremely good team when they keep a balanced attack and are able to run the ball. I think they can do that against this Falcons team. Now, I'm going to interrupt you. We're going to go back to the college football playoffs. They have announced that Alabama at 11-0 is going to be the number 1 seed. They have announced that Clemson at 10-1 is going to be the number 2 seed, and they have announced that Ohio State is going to be the number 3 seed. We now wait for the 4th, but just so you know, it is those 3 are locked in. Do you have any arguments or disagreements with those 3 being selected 1, 2, and 3?
Nope. I think that's who we picked. I think was it your 3% chance that Ohio State might slip, but I think the community has got it right. We're just waiting for this fourth. Who's going to fill this fourth spot? And that's the question because I think everyone has their. There's not a. It's not a like years before. This is a fourth. It's set in stone. I feel like anyone in here will be a good pick. So
I can agree with that. And while we wait, let me just go back over. We're going to jump back over here to the Bucks and whatnot. We mentioned that the Bucks have struggled defensively, but you look at it, they lost to a Saints offense. They gave up 38 points to the Saints. They gave up 27 points to the Rams. They gave up 27 points to the Chiefs. It's not like that defense has given up massive amounts of points to bad offenses. They're still very talented offenses that they're playing. I mean, you have the Rams that were just in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. You have the Chiefs that obviously were in the Super Bowl last year and ended up winning. They also have the Super Bowl MVP in there. And then they had the Saints there before Drew Brees went down in that game. It's not like they have just absolutely fallen apart. I think they've
well,
had more struggle.
if you, I'll jump in and I'll explain what I was talking about. Well, I'll get back to it. If you want to get it, they just made the fourth selection in the college
Go.
playoffs.
They have just selected Notre Dame at 10-1 to be the 4th selection in the playoffs. We will have an Alabama Notre Dame game. We will have a Clemson Ohio State rematch. Matt, do you have any? Do you disagree that Notre Dame is the 4th best team at all? I know we've talked about it all morning long, but what are your thoughts here on Notre Dame beating out Texas A&M?
Well, like I said, I picked the Aggies, but like you said, like we talked about, to me, if Notre Dame got over Aggies, I had no problem with it. Aggies were over Notre Dame, I had no problem with it. I think at the end of the day, the committee had to pick Notre Dame because they, like you said, they did beat a lot more top teams in the top 25. You never really saw them struggled as much as the Aggies did, and at the end of the day, well, Texas A&M did lose to Alabama. Notre Dame's only loss was to Clemson, who they beat earlier in the year. So
I think that's what it comes down to, right? I think that is the fact that Clemson and Notre Dame ended up on opposite sides of the bracket within the ACC, whereas Alabama and Texas A&M were on the same in the same division. So they never had that chance of a rematch. I think that if Texas A&M would have lost Alabama than ended up beating Alabama, they had a more legitimate claim than Notre Dame did. But the fact that they never got that redemption against Alabama, and Notre Dame and Clemson and Notre Dame are both 1-1 against each other this season, I think that's what's going to end up. Because it's hard to say Clemson loses one game to Notre Dame, Notre Dame loses one game to Clemson. How do you not put them both in there? So I understand what the committee's coming from, and
You see
also
the Aggies are
I
number
see
5 now. Yeah.
I see that, yes. And then Notre Dame um, had a stronger schedule, right? I think they were the 10th toughest schedule, whereas the Aggies were 13th. And so I do think Notre Dame had a little more legitimate claim to be the fourth team over Texas A&M. There's no surprise that Texas ended up being the fifth spot. I am curious to see who's going to end up being the sixth spot. I have a feeling it's going to end up being Cincinnati. Um, but I guess we'll see here shortly. Matt, keep me updated on that when
All
they
right.
do come out with the sixth one. We got to keep rolling on though. So let's go on to this Lions Titans matchup. You have one of the worst defenses in the Lions, which blows my mind considering what Patricia did with the Patriots before he was released with the Lions. Um, Going against
Ooh.
the number one
Um.
rusher in the league in Derrick Henry.
Before I get into that, they just made an announcement. Up. Surprisingly, number 6 was Oklahoma. They put over.
Oklahoma winning the Big 12, Oklahoma over Cincinnati. Once again, we're getting some bias, I think. I think that bugs me. I think Cincinnati had a more legitimate claim than Oklahoma, but you know what? There's a difference between a Power 5 and a Major 5 right then and there. Um, I'm to the point now where I'm so tired of seeing the Major 5 and uh, that I really think that they just need to do a third division within Division One football, because it's blows my mind that Oklahoma gets in over Cincinnati into that sixth spot. I don't care that they won the Big 12. Cincinnati, in my mind, should be there 100%. If you're not going to give them a legitimate claim to be able to fit into there, then you just need to put them in a completely different bracket. This is the second time that I've been this upset with somebody not being able to. I mean, with you saw Central Florida, and then you saw what just happened with Cincinnati.
They should call this the
I'm
Power
just.
5 playoffs.
That's exactly what it is. They should call it the Power Five playoffs.
I think they need to
It's
hold that 4th seed. That 4th seed should not go to a team. I like we said we talked about. I think we do pick Notre Dame over Cincinnati, but that 4th seed, whoever's the unbeaten, I feel should be getting a fair shot.
so
Getting that,
here's my thought
or
on it.
even that.
Here's my thought on it. I think if you're going to have, right, the top five, might as well, right? The Power Five, you might as well just put 8 teams in the playoffs, knock back a game in the regular season, put 8 teams in the playoffs. You put your Power Five guaranteed spots in there, and then you have 3 at-large teams. You put 3 at-large teams in there. Now we get a Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and Cincinnati into the playoffs. Or sorry, Oklahoma would be into the Power Five. Now we get a Notre Dame, Texas A&M, and Cincinnati would be your or your at-large 3 teams. And then we also get to see Oklahoma slide in there. But it's Oregon slide in there. But
I think just
I'm
did
disappointed.
extended 6 more games anyway. Number 1 seed gets kind of like that bye, but I don't
Yeah.
know where I can say that. But I would say this. Why I'm so disappointed, because like I said, I know you've been on the Cincinnati train, and those teams, the Central Florida, that was a really good team too. Um, but I think a lot of people forget, like, these teams are really good, because in my mind, I don't know how you feel like it. My best under Power 5 team in my life, the best team I ever seen, and the biggest upset you can see in my college history, was when Boise State beat Oklahoma, that powerhouse team, in the Fiesta Bowl. To me, uh, the biggest upset, and I feel like Cincinnati, if they got in, they or even with they didn't even consider them. I think they could have been a team that could upset someone with that defense. So.
Agreed. I'm extremely disappointed in them being able to um, select Oklahoma over Cincinnati. I think they made a very strong statement with that, and it's extremely disappointing for a Cincinnati team that did everything in their power to show. The closest game they had all year was in the conference championship against a very good Tulsa team. You want the closest game of the year to be in the conference championship. Whereas, I mean, it's just like I said, I'm disappointed in the college playoff committee um, based off of the season that Oklahoma had versus season that um, A&M had. I mean, I really think that that loss to Kansas State, it stands out in my mind. I mean, I can't see past
Mm-hmm.
it. Just I don't know.
Well,
But we got to go.
I was just saying we need to get back to NFL where it's a little happier and less biased.
Um, but we got to go. Yeah, we got to go back over to the NFL where it is very much a little bit more driven. Now, here we go. All right, so we got. I'm not even going to talk about the Titans Lions anymore. I'm just going to go on to the Texans and the Colts.
They're also depressing. We understand. Okay.
All right, so here's the deal, right? On paper, the Colts should be the much more dominant team, right? They have a
Mm-hmm.
top 5 defense both in the run and the pass. You have the Texans with a um, with one of the worst defenses in the run and the pass. You have the Texans who are absolutely terrible at running the ball. Obviously, the biggest bright spot with the Texans is Deshaun Watson. He is their light. He is basically the only thing that gives them any hope at the end of the day, not being so gloomy and doomy, but he is their team. Not only on offense, he's not their offense, he is their team. Whereas the Colts are a much more completed team. We've seen them run the ball better, which has made Phillips Rivers better. That defense has started to pick up steam a little bit after they struggled there for a couple weeks. But they just played each other 2 weeks ago. And we had a very tight game, a 26-20 win for the Colts. Matt, do you see this being another tight divisional matchup, or do you see somebody edging out somebody else in a more dominant fashion?
Um, if Watson, I'll make it short and sweet. If Watson had his weapons, I would think so. But for me, the biggest key is you have in the AFC, you have one of the worst rush defense in Texans going against one of the top rush defenses, and we know about Indianapolis. Jonathan Taylor has been having a great second half season, and he's picking up steam. And I think was it his seven? He has over 700 yards, and majority of that has came near the end of the season. So for me, can if Houston, who have had respectable defenses in the past, if they are able to shut down this run team, and I feel like at the end of the day, you got to force Philip Rivers to beat you. He will beat you on occasion, but he'll also have those off games and turn over the ball. So for me, it's going to be Houston stop the run, and make Phillips beat you.
I can definitely understand that. So let's go on to the next one. We have Bird versus Bird this week with the Philadelphia Eagles and Jalen Hurts behind center for the second week in a row. I should mention the undefeated Jalen Hurts under center. We also have Kyler Murray there with the Cardinals. The Philadelphia is coming off a big win against the Saints, going into Arizona for this matchup. Matt, what are your keys to victory for the Eagles in this game?
For the Eagles, defensively, don't let Murray out of containment, kind of like how we saw with what Clemson did to Brooks. You can't let those lanes. You can't over rush and open up gaps for Murray because Murray is electric. He will take off. So Philadelphia, they have the talent in the front seven to be able to, but and they go flip it to Jalen Hurts, not to do too much. I like the game plan what they did last week against the Saints. I feel like them coming out with a game plan again will be good against Arizona. For me, just hurt Jalen. I was like, we know the talent you have. Just go out, not to do too much. Miles Sanders is a beast. He's a guy that should have been focused more. So for me, Philadelphia, if they can just run this kind of this balanced rush attack and this kind of dual threat read option, I think that'll be their best chance.
You know, I don't disagree. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Cardinals. Here's the thing. The Eagles won last week with Miles Sanders running the ball 14 times for 115 yards and Jalen Hurts running the ball for 18 times for 106 yards. Jalen Hurts didn't throw the ball tremendously. He only went 17 for 30 and 167 yards, but he did score a touchdown in it. But here's the thing. Philadelphia sacked Hill 5 times last week. That defensive line got after it. Now, granted, you're not going to be able to sack Kyler Murray that many times. You only sacked 1 time last week, but you've got to get pressure on him. I think it comes down to Philly's defense more so than any other thing out here. I mean, sorry, the Cardinals defense. Sorry, the Eagles defense, if I can get my mind together. I'm still caught up on this freaking college football playoffs. But it comes down to the Eagles' defense being able to, like you said, contain Kyler Murray. I think Kyler Murray can do a very good job of evading pressure. He does a good job of keeping his eyes downfield. Obviously, he has 2 of the greatest receivers in the game. One of them obviously doesn't move like he used to, but you can never count out Larry Fitzgerald out there. Now, the Cardinals' defense is still a solid defense, and they've got to be able to, in my mind, contain the rushing attack for the Eagles. They've got to be able to keep Miles Sanders from going off. They've got to contain Jalen Hurts. I think if they can do those 2 things and just slow down the running game and you force Jalen Hurts to beat you through the air, that's their best chance. Because not to say any negative thing against Jalen Hurts, he's just unproven when he has to throw the ball around, especially late in the game and trying to make decisions with pressure against them. So I think the Cardinals need to play solid defense and focus on stopping the run first, force Jalen Hurts to beat you through the air, which he's probably capable of. But at the same time, you need to put that pressure on a rookie quarterback going into his second start, playing in his 3rd or 4th game. I think that's their best chance of going against this. So let's go on to the next matchup. One of the best matchups of the week, especially knowing that Drew Brees is coming back this week. We have the Kansas City Chiefs going into the New Orleans Saints. This game will be played at 4:25 today in the Superdome. Matt, tell me about your thoughts on this game.
My thought. Well, I'll get my thoughts. My key is to see if Breeze how healthy it is, because I feel like if the Saints didn't have to, they wanted. If they won last week, you wouldn't see Drew playing this week. Well, because of that, they got to win because they really don't want to go up to Green Bay and play the Packers up in Wisconsin. So they're fighting for
in January.
In January, so they do not want to do that with a 40-year-old Drew Brees does not want to do that. He wants to stay in this dome. So for me, the keys, I think, kind of go back to what we saw what the Saints did. This defense, who was on a tear, struggled against a rookie quarterback. They're going to have to bring their A game because they're not going against no rookie quarterback. They're going against a reigning Super Bowl MVP. So, for me, I want to. It's going to be this Chiefs offense and this Saints defense. We know what Patrick Mahomes will do. He threw 3 interceptions and still threw 300 and won the game. So even though we saw him, there's a stat that was thrown up that he has the most wins. I think it was 8. The most wins while being behind by double digits. So for me, this same team, they're going to have to put pressure on Patrick Holmes, and if they're going to put pressure, they got to get home because one thing that Holmes does well, if you're bringing heat and you can't get to him, he will tear you up. So for the Saints, I want to see if they can get. They have the team, they have the front four. They can do it if they can get Mahomes and get pressure and be able to hit him a couple times. And for the Chiefs, I want to see um, if they take away Tyreek Hill and Kelsey, and they have the players to do it. We've seen kind of like that Tampa. This offense becomes stale at some point, especially in the first half. We want to see going into playoff starting strong. So for me,
So let me go to the other side of things. You know, the Saints over the last couple of years with Drew Brees behind the helm have been a pass first team, right? But since he's gone down, they've turned more into, you've seen Sean Payton mold his offense into more of a running style offense to be able to try to take some pressure off of Taysom Hill, and this offense as a whole. The Chiefs are one of the worst defenses when it comes to stopping the run. In my mind, you've got to, like you said before, protect Drew Brees. He's coming off a rib injury here where you want to make sure that he's not taking shots. If he's getting hit, you put your entire season at jeopardy. I understand they bring him back because, yeah, nobody wants to go to Green Bay in January, especially when you're in New Orleans and you have a nice warm dome to be able to play in on turf, giving you the speed advantage. But is Drew Brees getting knocked out of this matchup worth that? And that's the question you come to. So I think you have to run the ball, try to take advantage of a very weak Kansas City rushing defense. Now, granted, you know, they're middle of the pack when it comes to the passing attack. So I think that this offense, if they can get rolling, stands a very good chance against the Chiefs defense. The problem is, you know, the Chiefs offense being one of the top offenses in the league, especially in the air, and we've seen what they've been able to do over and over and over again. So I think it then becomes um a run and go gun show. It's going to be who has the ball in their hand last, unless the Saints can slow the game down by running it. By running the ball, be able to slow it down a little bit more. But let me ask you this, Matt. Do you see this Chiefs Saints matchup being our Super Bowl matchup this year?
Definitely. I think both teams have it. Um, Chiefs offensively has the power to pull their defense and put them in this Super Bowl. And for the Saints, we've seen it. This defense is really talented. Defensively, they'll do their part. And with Drew Brees back and healthy, if he has all of his weapons, there's no doubt in my mind they can get to Super Bowl two if they're playing like how they're if their defense playing and Drew Brees is back there. There's no mind that they can not get back to the Super Bowl and this be a rematch.
Good deal. So let's go on to the next one. You know, we got the 9-4 Browns going against the NFC second place New York Giants. You know, did you think that the Giants are in here fighting for a playoff position here? You know, obviously Washington has a very tough matchup today. If Washington loses and New York's able to pull this one out, they are back into the league leaders. Did you ever think that at the start of the season, when the Giants started off at 0-5, or even when they were 1-7, that they would be in this position after going and winning 4 out of the last 5 games?
I didn't think it after week one when they lost Saquon Barkley. When they lost their best offensive player, you
Best
definitely
player.
don't.
You
Yeah,
don't even need to put offense in front of
yeah,
best player.
best player. I didn't expect this out of them. This team has showed that Judd was a great pick. I know there's a lot of people were doubting it because of his experience, but this team fights, and at the end of the day, when you're fighting for those extra yards, those extra possession, you're just fighting like it's like you're not taking plays off, you're not loafing, you're not doing that. You always have a chance because one thing you're doing better than the other one because you're not you're putting effort in every single player, every single person on that lineup is playing. You're inspiring to win because you know it's like, yeah, we're strong, but guess what? We still have a chance to make this playoffs. So, and at the end of the day, when we're in the NFL, this isn't like NBA. This isn't Major League where you have to win a best of something. You have one game, and at the end of the day, we have a chance to win. Our chances might be slim, but there's a chance, and that's what I really was surprised about this Giants team because I just didn't expect this team to come out. I thought after the start they would just go lay down, and you start hearing about Trevor Lawrence is going to be the feature potentially. So
And instead, they fight, they compete, and Daniel Jones has done a tremendous job. Now, here's obviously the question: Daniel Jones is not going to be playing this week. He played last week on that strained hamstring. You saw him struggle to be able to move around. He ended up taking a lot of shots. It
and he hurt his
it was
ankle
not
too, I believe.
exactly. It was not a good game for him. I think they brought him back too early. He was unable to protect himself. So you have Colt McCoy coming back in. Now you have the Browns with the second rushing attack in the league behind the Baltimore Ravens, who obviously have one of the best rushing quarterbacks of all time. But the Browns have two guys in Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb that can just absolutely wear you out. On top of that, Baker Mayfield seems to be really coming into form here recently. You saw what he did last week there with the Ravens, allowing them to have a chance to win the game at the end. But the Giants are one of the best defenses in the league when it comes to stopping the run. However, they have struggled in the air when they haven't been able to get pressure on the quarterback. What what do the Giants need to do defensively to slow down this offense to give Colt McCoy and this Giants offense a chance to be able to match the Browns?
I think you said it best. They're not gonna stop the run. The Chubbs and Hunt is just two of a 1-2 punch. Your best chance is you have to kind of stop. You just want to put them. You want to slow them down, and I'm talking. You want to put them, maybe get them. It's like the Browns are going to get the points, but get them in those third and long situations. Make Baker, and I know I'm starting to come around. We've been liking what we've seen from Baker Mayfield, but I know for a lot of people he hasn't sold it everyone yet. He hasn't been 100% sold that he can continue this success and this just to continue to be steady. So for me, they just have to put them in these third and long situations and force Baker to beat them through the air. I think it's where they're gonna. It's more of a risk, but I feel like that's will be their better chance of winning this game if they can just make Baker beat you. But it's better saying it's easier saying than doing, especially against this Giants or this Browns running attack.
Agreed. So let's go ahead and go on to our predictions here as we're closing this thing up. Matt, Patriots versus Dolphins. Who you got?
Um, I got the Dolphins. I just can't trust this New England's offense.
No, I agree. I can't trust the New England team in general. I think the Dolphins are playing way too well on defense, and doing enough on offense to be able to handle the Patriots steadily, and will take this game. What about the Seattle versus Washington? Who you got?
Love what Washington's been doing lately, but like we talked about earlier, I got the Seahawks. I just can't trust the Washington's offensive can go against this high offense of Seattle.
I agree with you. I'm going to take Seattle as well. I think that if Alex Smith was there behind Washington, I'd be more inclined to select Washington and the Washington football team because of I think their dominant defense is going to give Seattle trouble. However, I don't think they're going to score enough points to be able to keep up with them. What about the Buccaneers going into Atlanta? Who you got?
We talked about earlier what offense we're going to see from Atlanta or what team flipping the coin. I see them struggling. I got Tampa.
Yeah, I got Tampa too. I don't think the Atlanta Falcons will be able to keep up with the Bucks, even if Matt Ryan has a game to remember. I just don't think they can keep up with the Bucks offense, who I believe is going to run the ball and wear down this Falcons defense. And I don't think. I mean, I really don't even think Matt Ryan's going to have that great of a game because this Bucks defense is just too talented and too good. Let's go on to the Lions going into Tennessee. Who do you have?
Uh, it was a hard pick for me to even pick the Lions, but Matt Stafford's supposed to play with those injured ribs. Definitely looking, it's gonna be a hard game for him to play with hurt ribs. I got Titans, even with Matt Ryan or Matt Stafford having those hurt ribs. It's gonna be even harder for them to try to upset him.
Yeah, I don't think that the Lions stood much of a chance here. I'm going to go with the Titans all day in that rushing defense or rushing attack by Derrick Henry. Let's go into the Texans at the Colts. Matt, who do you have?
I know we're big Deshaun Watson fans, but at the end of the day, he lost so many key weapons, and at the day, I don't think the defensively can stop this Colts running game.
I agree, and I don't even think that I don't think their defense can stop anybody. I mean, they would have trouble stopping a dripping drain right now or a dripping sink faucet. Um, what about the Jalen Hurts Eagles going into the Kyler Murray
I
Arizona
think
Cardinals?
that was probably the biggest upset in the NFL season this year. But the biggest statement, the biggest under headline that everyone forgot was this Philadelphia secondary got demolished in injuries. So saying that, I got the Cardinals because they are missing a lot of weapons, and I think Murray will make them pay with all these
I
weapons they
agree. I
got.
think the Cardinals are just going to have too much for the Eagles. I don't think Jalen Hurts can have the same day that he did last week. And even though it was a very talented Saints team, I think that the Cardinals are just going to be too much over a course of time. You're not going to be able to get pressure on him like you did on Hill. He's just too elusive, too good. He's got more weapons on the outside. And that's saying something because we're just talking about the Saints. Going into the Saints, it's talking about who you believe the Super Bowl matchup is going to be between the Kansas City Chiefs and the New Orleans Saints going into the Superdome. We've got one of the greatest of all time going against one of the greatest up and comings that we have in the game right now. Matt, who are you taking in this game, the Chiefs or the Saints?
If it was 30 other teams, Drew Brees coming back, and versus any other of the 30 teams, I would say Saints. But it's because they're going against the Chiefs and they're going against Patrick Mahomes. I'm going with the Chiefs. I just think they're just too talented, and they're just on just been playing together well, and they're gonna have a bounce back game against. Even when they struggle, they looked good.
You know, I really want to say the Chiefs. I've been actually thinking the Chiefs this entire time, but seeing that you're taking the Chiefs and seeing that we're pretty much locked in with the exact same teams, I'm guessing we're probably going to be locked in with the next matchup too. I need something to happen to be able to pull within another game closer to you because I'm down 6 games right now going into the last couple weeks of the season. I'm going to trust Drew Brees and the Saints. I think Drew Brees is going to give this Saints team a spark that they need. I think they're going to be playing pissed off after what happened last week with Philadelphia. So I'm going to trust that Drew Brees comes back regardless of how healthy he is. I think they're going to continue to try to run the ball like they have the last couple weeks and end up being able to do something tremendous. Not to mention it's in the Superdome. We all know that when they're at home, they're an even tougher team to beat. I'm going with Drew Brees and the Saints. Let's go with the Cleveland Browns versus the New York Giants. Who do you got?
I would have picked the Giants honestly this week but there was one thing that made me not pick them. The Browns although they lost to the Ravens, they played great. They played great, and Baker Mayfield played great. I don't want to be eating my words next week when he comes out here and shits the bed, but I'm hoping he proves me wrong, like he's been doing lately. I got the Browns.
Yeah, I'm taking the Browns too. If Daniel Jones was behind center for the Giants, it'd be tempting. But with him being out and Colt McCoy being back there, I think they're going to try to manage the game a little bit, try to run the ball a little bit more. And if it's going to come down to who can run the ball more efficiently, I'm going to take the Browns every day of the week in this matchup. But it's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be fun to see. I think it's going to be one of the better surprise games to be able to watch on Sunday night. And then obviously, we're going to have some things going on Christmas. Um, Weekend that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I believe um, uh, I appreciate everybody tuning in. Next week we're going to have a little Christmas special. BuckHeels and I will be joining each other together for the first time since we've started this. We'll be doing the stream together there on the day after Christmas or the 2 days after Christmas. Christmas on Friday. So there on the 27th, we'll be doing this stream together for the first time, which means there's a good chance that I will not be streaming on my account, so you can catch it from hosting. So if you've been coming to Volzy's stream to be able to watch this, come back. You can see the host on BuckHeels, but we'll be back on here the week after that. But you can still catch us on the WV Sports Talk on Facebook, WV Sports Talk on YouTube, and then of course on twitch.com/BuckHeels, twitch.com/Volzy. Thank you all for tuning in. It's been a lot of fun topics to talk about. Obviously, we got the college playoff matchups. Looking forward to seeing there. Matt, before we go, give me your predictions right now. We got the college playoffs today. The last thing before we go, who you taking? Alabama, Notre Dame, and Ohio State Clemson rematch.
This is semis you're talking about?
Yes.
I got Alabama, and I'm gonna take Clemson.
Alabama, Clemson. You know, I would love to see that again. I just I think Ohio State comes out with a fire. I think they're going to get pissed off because last year they ended up going. So I think we're going to have an Ohio State Alabama national championship game. And with that being said, we thank you all for tuning in. Catch us again next week for a little Christmas holiday special there, when we'll be having the NBA games and a couple other things going on in the NFL. Until then, WV Sports Talk.
Merry
we out.
Christmas.
For the